All right, well, welcome everyone. I appreciate you taking the time to come learn a little bit about our newest reporting feature called Power BI, a Microsoft product that we have brought into the system to help with reporting and analytics for intakes and forms and activity cards and other areas of reporting within the system. So today we're just going to go over a few basics of where you can find the tool and some of the basics of building some reports, whether they be graphical or just more textual in nature. So I'm going to share my screen here real quick, and we'll go over a couple of different options here. Hopefully everyone can see my screen now.
Yep.
Okay. So the Power BI tool is located, you'll have an icon here on the left side called Dashboard. And this is what takes you into the actual tool itself. So I'll just go ahead and click on that so you can see what it looks like when it first opens up. And this will open up, this is permission based, so whether you want to give people permissions to edit or not is up to you. If they have the ability to just view it, then they'll just see the page. If they can edit, then they can edit that and go in and work on visualizations and basically build their own reports. So I'm going to go ahead and go into edit mode here. And what you can see here is I've actually got a couple of different reports right here. And these are to give you examples of how things are built within the system. So I'm going to start with this one right here. So if we look at this one, click on this report, I'm going to go over here and show you exactly what this is and how it was built. So this one is using what's called a matrix. And the reason that I use this matrix one is because it allows me to lay questions out across the top so that I can have all the answers for each individual in a single row. So that way, if I to export this out into an Excel file or something like that, I have everything on a single row for each individual user. So this particular one, what I've done is you can see I'm using the case name on the rows, and I'm using what's called intake column, which is selected from over here. If we scroll down here, you can see I've got intake column and intake value. So intake column is essentially everything, all the questions that you have in your intake when your system was created. So that includes the things like beyond the client details and the case management, the actual customized portion of the intake where you're asking your questions and the data that you're gathering when you bring in a case. That information I've got laid out across the top here as columns. And you can see each one of these. Are you employed? Are you filling out members? Are you currently suicidal or homicidal? All these are questions that are asked on the initial intake. And then down here in the values, I'm applying the intake value, which is basically the answer to all the questions that you had. So we can see here for like this individual right here, for race, they're American Indian or Alaska Native, or they didn't know or refused. So both of those are checked in this one. And again, this is I'll say this is a demo system, so some of the data may not necessarily make sense to you, but this is just for example purposes. So we can go through here and we can scroll down, we can look and see. So like admit date. So for this particular client, their admission date was on January 11th of 2022. And we actually go down and record the time. We have their age. And you can see anything that's blank just means that basically it hasn't been filled out. So again, this is a demo system, so a lot of these things are not filled out currently. But you get the idea of it. So basically all you do is from this side, which are your fields and things that you have, you just go and select the ones that you want, and then you place them where you want them to be. And then over here, we have the ability to filter any of these things that we've selected. So for example, case name, I come over to the filter, I click the drop down here, I can go through and select individuals, or I can just select everyone. And then for the intake column, for example, I can go in, I can select everything on the intake, or let's say I just wanted to know like age and agency, for example. If I just select these, it'll filter the data out accordingly. Everything else will disappear except for whatever questions I'm asking across the top. and their corresponding answers. And the same thing with the intake values here. You have the ability to go in and do a little bit more filtering here if you're looking for things that start with, like if it's textual answers, for example, you could say I want ones that they start with this word, for example, or I want to see things that are not blank. So anything that wasn't filled out, I want that to not show up. You have a variety of filters here that you can do within what I will call just a text report, basically. So down here is basically the same layout. This is a matrix as well, but this time it's pulling from a form. So in this situation, what we have here is I've got the case name and I've got the form name. And then I've selected, just like you do with the intake, only now it's called the form column and the form value. And so that's going to lay it out the same way that it did for the intake, only again, this is for just a form. And the one thing that I've done over here is I've gone through and I've selected, I've got all these, I'm only pulling from one form right now. If I wanted to add additional forms, I could just check those if they've been filled out. Like for example, if I added the HMIS one here, then it's going to put those questions in here as well. And then it's going to show up anybody that also has that form filled out. And then if I drop this down, we can see if that's the form. And then if they've answered any questions at all in there, it would show up here. This form looks like it's been saved, but it looks like it was saved as a blank form. So it's really easy to go in here and do your filtering. And the basic process for any of these types of reports that you're going to do is, again, you're just selecting from over here. You're selecting whether you want an intake or whether you want a form. And then you're selecting over on the filters if you want the whole thing or if you want certain portions. And then how you want it laid out, whether you want it laid out this way or if you want it laid out maybe in a different, in a column manner. You can use the table right here, and the table one will create basically the same type of report, only under each person, all of these items would be listed. So you'd have Aiden Smith and then a drop down of all the questions and all the answers, and then the next person with a drop down of all the questions and all the answers. It's personal preference, honestly. I think that this gives it a cleaner look and it's much easier to work with. And again, this is using a matrix versus using a table view. So now let's go and look at, so we've got these visualizations here, and I've created a page over here that kind of helps show some of these visualizations and how they can be used. So here I've just made a couple of samples so people can kind of see them. So for example, here we're doing a simple graphic of the activities by their status. So we can see within the system you have completed, flagged, in progress, and new. So within this, I can go in here and see either percentages or just counts, like how many of the activities are new, for example. Of all the cases that I'm using, there's 46 new activities, which is 74% of all activities. And you can see it breaks it down just into this chart. And you can, if you want, for example, if I wanted to see this as a table, I could go in here and show this as a table. And it's going to give me the bigger picture, and then it's going to give me basically the summation and the breakdown of all the activities. When I'm not focusing on this anymore, I can just click back to report. It takes me back to my graph with my page with everything that's on here. Same thing over here. We can see this one is what's called a donut. Again, it's a donut chart over here, and this is by health status. So in the system, you have the red, green, and yellow health status. So this is the count of cases by health status. And you can see if you arrow over it, you get the tooltip for, there's 3 cases that are red. There are 3 cases that are blank. They don't have necessarily a status associated with them. There are 3 that are yellow. There is 1 that is green. And again, you can show this as a table if you like. You can go into the filtering on this. Like if I wanted to go into, let's see, on the case health, for example, I just want to see these. I don't even want to see the blank one. So I'm